Today is August 19th, 2017, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is Green Ranger.
And I'm Deck Tech.
And it's the week after Worlds on Duel Links. The Paradox Brothers are here with a new card and some of the old cards as well. And most of the community has been talking about some of the recent complaints about free-to-play, and also DK had some insights about how to improve the process of streamlining communication with Konami. So mostly it's been not too many things have been going on in the Duel World itself, but there's just been a lot of talk going on. So, Deck Tech, what have you been up to?
So of course I've been playing against the Paradox Brothers, as everyone has, but kind of my more personal struggle was that I finally finished buying through Flame Tyrant.
Oh, man.
It took 140 packs, so that was a little bit unlucky. I think, as I mentioned last time, the stupid first Venus was in the 78th pack of my first run through, or I should say my second run through, because I bought it once through when it first came out. And then had to get another 60 some odd the second time through to get my third one. But that means that I now have a full set of Venus and a full set of Sergeant Electro. Sergeant Electro still sees a good amount of play in control decks, and Venus has been out of favor for a little bit, but it's something that I wanted to try for a long time. I think it's currently out of favor because kind of one of the benefits of it is that you have these normal monsters that you can use as easy fodder for things like Order to Charge, and now Order to Charge is a little bit outclassed by things like Super Rush Headlong. But I've been playing the deck up in Platinum, I think I'm at Plat 4, and it's doing really well. I think I went 6-1 with it so far, minus a couple games that I dropped for stupid reasons, like I got a phone call on one, and I forget what the other thing was, but I dropped a couple games for reasons that had nothing to do with the deck. And other than that, it's been performing really well. It plays like a control deck, but it has a little bit more of like explosive power when you get like the perfect finish. And the cost of that is that you have less individually powerful cards because you're playing Venus itself is 1600 with 0 defense, and then of course the shine balls are not particularly strong. But you can get back your Gemini monsters with the Red Lotus, which it all kind of synergizes well, the Knight of the Red Lotus. So I've been using that to help out with like Red Eyes and stuff, because it's a really strong normal monster that you can then summon and get rid of their stuff. So I think it matches up well, and that it's, I guess, unfairly not in the meta anymore, because I think people kind of see the common trends, and they don't want to look at this thing that appears to be kind of behind the times. But I think it matches up just fine, and we'll see if it still works for me up in Legend when I get there. But so far so good, and more importantly, perhaps, I'm having a ball. So having a ball, totally unintentional, but yes, having a lot of fun with my shine balls.
Sweet.
How about you? How's it going?
All right, so I've been involved with a lot of moving lately. That's why I wasn't in the last episode, but and also job interviews. So real life has been hitting me hard. But yesterday, I was finally getting back to PvP. I'm close to 40 now, but it was interesting getting back to gold in that I was playing a lot of people who didn't have cards. They were just hitting into my mirror walls nonstop. Super Rush Headlong, no one had that. No one had enemy controller. So I made it to Platinum. Pretty much just I got disconnected once, but I pretty much win all the games with Zombie Gemini, which is still one Gozuki version. So pretty bad version that's still winning in gold, but I'm Platinum now, so I expect my PvP wins to come a little slower now. I am still trying to buy Crimson Kingdom packs for the Gozuki, but I'm about halfway into the second set, and I still don't have them yet. But I got like a ton of other stuff, like a prismatic zombie, red eye zombie, for example. And I finished the Paradox event yesterday, but
Nice.
I have almost everything. I just have one destruct potion, but uh, three of everything else.
Nice. And your new place is why we're recording on Saturday, right?
Right. Yeah, we're recording on Saturdays now, just to fit the schedule here, I guess. I'm trying to do it with fewer people around. There's a lot of noise. If you've ever been to New York City, it's just really loud. So dealing with that. Before I was in a college setting, I lived next to a college campus, so the only thing you had to deal with were drunk people at night. But that's not really, there's no babies screaming around in college area.
Well, we're glad to have you back.
Thank you. You did great last week.
We tried.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna move on to the news. It's gonna be a follow up on the World Championships. If you missed it, Timmy from New Zealand won first place, and Deck Tech talked about it last week. And also, all of the replays are on the game client in Kaiba Cup report number 4, so you can check out all the replays or brackets in the games. The fourth place finisher from Malaysia, I think, Silent Fold, posted some of the information right away, pretty fast, on Reddit about his prizes. Well, it was first put on Facebook, but someone translated it and put on Reddit. So the main prizes, it seemed like, were cards instead of cash prizes. You have an experience with card rewards, right, from your past game shop?
Yeah, I mean, not personally, but my understanding is that Yu-Gi-Oh's done it this way for a while now. I remember at one point my buddies over at Comic Odyssey, where I used to play in Pasadena, had Cyberstein was introduced this way to the original TCG, and so obviously with 8,000 life points, that card was better than with 4,000. So it was a really strong card, and I think at one point the Comic Odyssey guys had something like 8 out of the 10 that existed in the world or something like that. And I remember they were actually using it in their decks because it was really good, and it's probably like a recurring cycle where they would use it to win more of them or something. And anyway,
Did they let you touch the card?
I don't know if I ever touched the Cyberstein.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, I got a Trihorn Dragon, which is the only secret rare I ever got, and someone touched it. Like, I didn't have a screen on it or anything, or like a wrapping on it. Someone just touched the hologram, and I freaked out like crazy. Yeah. Anyways, person on Reddit named Seonage translated it in English. So they got plane tickets for free. And this echoes what Decade said. They were very generous about providing things for the players so they could be comfortable. So plane tickets, hotel fees, transport, Wi-Fi, and food. And the Wi-Fi is important so they could practice the games in their hotel or wherever. And also the cash cards that we mentioned before, they're worth the one Timmy got. We don't really know what that is right now, but it's 35,000. Second, third, and fourth place got $72,000 cards.
7,200.
7,200. And then the other guys got $2,000 cards. And there were additional prizes. First and second place, a live streaming duel with screen time. First to third place got an interview with Tokyo TV, the magazine interview, and merchandise from Tokyo TV, and everyone got shirt, tags, participation certificate, etc. DK actually got an interview too. If you go to his, there's a Duel Links meta Instagram, I think, and it's either that or somewhat other one. But I saw he was getting interviewed by someone, so maybe it's more about the community, the Duel Links meta problem.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is that he's probably, not just a notable person in the American community, but just in the Duel Links community as a whole. So that's cool.
Yeah.
There were a couple things I wanted to clarify and just point out on this. The cards were not like gift cards or anything that's worth this much. It wasn't like an Amex or anything. These are actual Yu-Gi-Oh cards that are, I guess, because Konami prints such a limited supply, one of these first place cards for each Worlds or maybe just one of them once or whatever, they have like pretty defined market values. So these are like the estimated values based on I don't know, however they decide these things. I think Decade said he actually did sell his card for 2,000. So pretty close. And I guess if you can control the market so much and that you have a pretty good idea on what the prize pools are, you can do this instead of actually giving money. But like 35 grand for first place, pretty solid. I'm not sure if 7,200 was intended. That's a slightly weird number, but like 2,000 makes sense. So I guess they're doing a pretty good job of curating these cards to the point that it's the prize amounts that they want to give out without giving out money, which also might have a specific legal reason, either in Japan or in one of the countries that they're big in, that they don't want to give money, but they want to give things with very defined values.
Yeah, I think so too. And these cards, I don't know if they exist in another form in the TCG, or if this one has like a special foil on it to make it the way it is, maybe.
I don't know. It's also in a special container. He pointed, Silent Loft.
Fold.
Fold?
Fold, yeah, silent fold. I think they called
that. Okay. It's not how it's spelled, but whatever. He has, like, he posted his card and it has like a special container as well. It doesn't show the top or bottom of the container, but like it could have some sort of special markings on it. Like, I don't know. That'd be kind of cool.
I'm looking at the set, and there's only 2 cards in the set for Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2017 prize cards. So I wonder how the value is defined from like the first place and the third place guy, or like Decades, because
well, yeah, I saw a picture I think from Decade's Instagram in which he had 3 cards. So maybe first place got all 3, or something like that.
And this card's kind of crazy. The one that Silent Fold got, we were talking about it. How if it attacks and wins the game, you win a match. So you win like all the other duels just by winning with 1 card.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So as we know now, both the original Yu-Gi-Oh format and the new Duel Links format, you are winning a best 2 out of 3. And this card says, if when you attack with this card, it reduces your opponent's life points to 0, you win not just that game, but the entire match. So that's pretty crazy. It's like, it's always funny to see cards that are outside of the game. You know, it's referring to, it's kind of like breaking the fourth wall a little bit. It's interesting.
But this page just says illegal too, so no one can officially use this card.
Oh, so that's even weirder. That makes it like...
It's more of a trophy then.
Right, yeah, that makes it like a cash prize trophy thing instead of... I guess it just hurts the pretend image that you're giving away cards and, oh, well, people might sell them and we have no control over that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know that my buddies at Comic Odyssey were definitely playing with their Cybersteins, and I think that might have been part of the reason why they got in trouble. Not that they weren't supposed to, but that it was causing issues for the game.
Yeah. I mean, at that time especially, when there weren't a ton of really powerful cards, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, they still had like Regeki and Mirror Wall and Mirror Force and all of those like goodies, but yeah, everything. But yeah, it was definitely a smaller card pool with which made it a lot easier to kind of just play one of each of the best cards and then you can abuse it. So I don't know.
And on Decade's summary stream, he also talked about all the issues that went into the event. It was the first Duel Links Worlds event, so they they had a lot of issues. Just to sum it up, they had a lot of issues. And one of the issues was that the deck lists were leaked prior to the event, and I don't think DK plays Hearthstone. He mentioned that he might try it or something, but he comes from a Yu-Gi-Oh background, so I assume in Yu-Gi-Oh they don't share the deck list since he was so shocked that it was leaked beforehand. And I don't know, what are the pros and cons of seeing a deck list beforehand versus knowing what your opponent has right away?
Right. So I guess the counterpoint, and not counterpoint, but the comparison is to Hearthstone, because in Hearthstone they have both open and closed deck list events. And the way that I see it, the distinction between them is what the organizers want to kind of emphasize and reward. So if you have closed deck lists, that encourages things like deck list innovation and tech cards and all of that stuff, unexpected things in your deck list, because that way you can win by surprise. And to a certain extent, that rewards people who are innovative deck builders, because they get this advantage from the surprise factor that's taken away if they have open deck lists. It also, however, rewards players who just aren't as good, because they can just sneak, like they can win games just by playing kind of like troll cards that surprise their opponents. And so that's why some people prefer the open deck list formats, because that, at least in theory, rewards the better player more often, because the better players will be able to see their opponent's deck list and play the entire match with all of their opponent's information in mind. And so there's no games won by the surprise factor. There's no games, you can make every play based on what you know your opponent to have. And so I think that I like the open deck list format for things like world championships, because I want the best player in the world, or at least, obviously there's RNG in card games, but you want the best players to win more often in these events that are considered like the major events, so that you're showcasing the skill and rewarding the best players when they win. So I like that, but I'm kind of a brewer. I like to tinker with stuff. I like tech in decks. That's, hence my name. And so I prefer the closed list format for maybe like smaller events and casual tournaments. And I understand that it kind of causes a little bit of a disconnect if you have different formats for, if everything you do leading up to Worlds is closed deck and then all of a sudden Worlds is open deck, and that's kind of a little bit weird, but I don't know, it seems like there's advantages to both, and I kind of want both to exist in different parts of it. Also, if you have closed deck formats, then you get those really crazy like reaction plays, that it seems like it might be better for the stream or whatever, for the viewer generally, if it's closed deck format but the casters know the decks. It's always weird when the casters don't know what's coming, because then, he might have this out, he might have this other one, I don't know. I don't like that, but it does add a lot of benefits to have the closed deck, but also lots of benefits to the open deck format.
I think the way it was intended to be was like a mix, because they kind of didn't know what archetype the deck was, so they would know, maybe 2/3 of the deck, and they would know what ability the duelist had going into the duel. So I think that was the plan, was to have the name of the deck, so the ability.
I see. Yeah. An important caveat, of course, is if the tournament is supposed to be one format, and through some sort of mistake or a malicious action or whatever, some players get more information than other players, then obviously that's bad. That's not what I'm talking about here. So if there's a leak that only helped some players, then 100% DK should be upset about that. But And also, even if it helps all players, like if it's just a last minute mess up that causes just a total change in the way the tournament's held, then of course that is also, even though it's fair in the sense that it affects everyone the same way, it can be to the disadvantage of some players who prepared for a certain type of format and then got another one. So I totally understand all of those complaints. We're talking about more like going forward, what can happen. But what we definitely know is that everyone knew each other's characters going into it. The legendary duelists were all announced like a week before or something like that. So I thought that the way that they were doing it was legendary duelists were announced, but skills and decks were not.
Oh.
And that would kind of mirror the Hearthstone format in that you know what heroes your opponent's bringing. But the problem with it is that in Hearthstone, you know, you have a designated class that has a small card pool. They all have the same hero power within that class. So if you know that your opponent is bringing a certain class, then sometimes you know exactly what deck they're bringing because there's only one viable deck within that class, but usually it's capped out at like 3. Whereas in Duel Links, the legendary duelist can learn several different skills. So if you only know the legendary duelist and not the skill, then it can, you know, and there's 3 different permutations of this. You all of a sudden have one that can be 5 different decks, you have another one that can be 3 different decks, and you have this last one that can be another 2 or 3 decks, and then there's just so many possible lineups that you can't really prepare for it that well. So if it were a legendary duelist and skill announced, then that would be a little bit weird because I feel like there would be, like, the legendary duelist doesn't matter except for the skill. So there were some instances in which certain legendary duelists seemed to have been picked because the skill was a little bit unexpected. Like if you're running Pegasus and you're running Restart, like a couple players were, that's a little bit of a flip because you would think Pegasus, oh, maybe it's Mind Scan. But like, so I'm inclined to think that it was only supposed to be the legendary duelist announced, and I don't know what Yu-Gi-Oh should do going forward, or what Duel Links should do going forward as to how much information is given versus, held back. And I think that giving the legendary duelist but not the skill was kind of an interesting tweak on it because there was so much more permutations available per legendary duelist than the similar structure in Hearthstone, that it made it a really interesting mind game where you could kind of play legendary duelists with certain skills to be expected and then maybe deviate from it a little bit just to throw your opponent off. And I kind of like that aspect of it.
Yeah, that explains why DK used tunes with Kaiba.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That was definitely a flip. Right. It doesn't make sense in a role-playing mindset, but it also doesn't make sense because beatdown was like the most popular skill going into this event and in the event. So when you run Kaiba, who's the only one who can use beatdown, and not use beatdown, that was I have to assume that was a deliberate attempt to mess up his opponent. And
him not having the dragon, that kind of made that happen.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, and we'll talk about that later. But hopefully, the events to come are better, go better. Overall, I'd say the event was acceptable. I'd say, I mean, apparently some bad things happened some mistakes happened, but it happened. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first one they've ever done. Mistakes do happen, and even some things that weren't mistakes so much as just poor decisions, like it happened exactly how intended, but maybe that wasn't the best call. You know, that type of stuff happens too. Yeah. It's a learning experience, and it seems like they're dedicated to continuing Duel Links and doing this for years to come. So hopefully they will continue to develop it and streamline and all of those goodies.
Yep. All right. Paradox Brothers are back with a vengeance. this is the second time they're coming, I think. So if you didn't earn them the first time, they're the latest. Well, before Merrick, they were the newest legendary duelist you can unlock. So you can unlock them as a playable character, and they're really worth unlocking because they have two abilities that are really good for farming. So definitely earn enough points to get these guys. Um, you can challenge them at the gate, or they show up as random spawns. Uh, I think one of the guys, Merrick, didn't show up as a random spawn. I forget someone recently did not show up. In the Duel World, they come with challenges, so you could choose the Power Gate, which awards an extra 1,000 duel assessment points, but it deducts 700 duel assessment if you lose. So if you lose a duel, you're not going to get anything. You're going to get less than 1,000 duel assessment, and it just doesn't. You're going to get nothing. But an interesting thing about the Vagabond like challenges, there's a challenge called No Monster Effect Activation. This actually doesn't affect Cerberus. I went into one of the games with Cerberus and he still kept growing in attack. So I don't really know what it might mean. Flip effect. I don't
Yeah, I think it means like activated effects as opposed to
know. Okay.
service was a triggered effect.
Yeah, it's like ill blood activating an effect to summon someone, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean,
So if you're running a Cerberus farm, you could still do the no monster effect activation deck. And the other ones don't really affect them either. Like limited monster zone doesn't affect Cerberus. Spell traps that doesn't affect it either. So you just keep going for the high dual assessment ones.
yeah, I don't like the spell trap one because sometimes my hand gets too full or whatever, and I want to put things down. Also, my version of it, I have 2 equips and then 1 slot open for the anti-magic arrows. But other than that, I agree. Most of them don't really affect my Serb farm deck either, which is working pretty well. I think these guys are really easy to farm. I seem to recall they were pretty easy last time as well, but they're this time for sure they're pretty easy.
It's possible that they had the trap card Labyrinth of Nightmare in 40 last time. I forget, but in 30 it makes it really difficult because you can't even play Serb on your first turn if they have it out already. Because your Serb's gonna go into defense mode, or your Happy Girls are gonna go to defense mode. So 30
Yeah,
is impossible.
30 was actually way harder than 40. I had the same experience where I've actually played against them, I don't know, 30 times or whatever, and I've lost like 5, and 4 of those losses were just the first time through trying to get to 30. So it's a little embarrassing, but I mean, that's kind of the hardest one, I would say.
Have you been using Unhappy Girl or Serb mostly for this?
I've been doing Serb for the 40s.
There was a one with I made a first one with a card called That Wacky Magic, where it destroys all their monsters based on how many magic cards you have. But that one was really dependent on having like you couldn't hold on to too many cards, but there were so many dependent cards to hold on to, so I switched over to a shooting star bow instead of that.
Yeah, that's the one I'm doing, the shooting star bow.
Yep. How have your rewards been for that? Like there was only one new card, right? The struck potion. There's a rare too, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that I've gotten. Well, I know that I haven't finished it like you have, because I'm not close yet. I still only have like 1 million points or whatever. I just got the Archfiend card last night, I think.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit behind, but I'm definitely going to get there. Almost always with these gate events, what happens is I do my auto duels for the standard duelists throughout the day, and I get most of my standard duelists in, but what it results in is that I have infinite of the whatever token is being used for the particular gate event to spend on the gate event. So I just need to sit down and go ham on level 40 farms because I just have so many, I think they're gate keys this time, that I just need to kind of use them.
I've been getting a ton of the extra SR rewards, like the trap card damage gate, I think. So
Mhm.
just getting some SR stones from the farms. I'm done, but if I see them around, I'll still do them.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about we're going to give a further 2 cents on the issues of free to play and just the cost of Duel Links in general. But spoiler alert, one of the tips is that you want to do these gate events hard, even if you already have all the cards that you need, because these gate events are a free way to get a lot of resources like those jewels and like the gems just to use for packs and stuff. So
Skills too.
skills, yeah, definitely skills. Especially if the event allows for easy farming with any character, then amazing for skills, and you definitely want to do that as much as you can if that's the case.
Yeah, for this one, for Serb, I used Draw Sense Light. So the hard thing is knowing which one of my guys on my team has Draw Sense Light. And it's like
Right.
Pegasus has it.
Yeah, I think Pegasus comes with it because mine has it as well. But I've been doing Serb with Yugi for
Onto it.
Yeah,
I hate that skill.
spellcaster one.
I hate that skill.
Well, it doesn't work if you have Vassal in there as well. But I just do regular Serb, and it gets me 7,000, and I'm fine with it.
Because it needs 1,800 instead of 1,500, and that sucks for this one because he has 1,500 guys. That's what I always
Yeah,
do.
yeah. I have 3 enchanted javelins in mind, which
That
means
makes
that
sense.
sometimes, yeah, sometimes the draws are a little bit clunky, but it means that I don't usually die to his early plays.
That makes sense why people run that trap card. I'm just running all
Yeah,
the cards.
yeah,
All right. The card flipper campaign's back. It seems like it's been a really long time since we've had this, but there's a lot of cards this time. Well, like a lot of things to pick from, but
yeah,
it offers another Mako Master of Barriers, so it's the third version, I think, because you could have purchased it from EX Gems before. So this might have been
yeah.
the third one here. And then there's an all new card called Aurora Wing, and this is 1200, 1600 winged beast water attribute. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon this card and face up attack. You can only use this effect once per turn. Pretty good card, right?
Yeah, I really like it. I think it's interesting just because it's a different effect, but it's also interesting because it seems like a pretty solid card. We're going to talk about how water is relevant in some cards that are coming to us soon. It also gives you both a life gain effect, kind of, and it gives you a possible ramp effect in that if you play this guy presumably in defense mode and then they attack through it and they only have one attacker, then he comes back and it's like a free 1,600 life in that sense.
Right.
And it's also a ramp in the sense that they would have killed your guy, but instead they didn't. So now you have a tribute to use the next turn. So that's really cool. I don't think it's going to be like shaping the meta or anything like that. I don't think it's going to see play everywhere, but I do think it might see a little bit of play, and it's an interesting card. So hope so.
It does seem like a budget version of a new card called Treeborn Frog from the new set. If you you don't feel like buying the new set, this does the same thing, but it only lasts one turn. I mean, it's less flexible than Treeborn Frog because that comes back every turn, but it's a budget version of that, and it's hard to get tributes out in general, so it's good.
Yeah, we also have like a Merry Lease and a couple other options for people who want to play tributes, but I think that there's a lot of unexplored space in this game about tribute monsters because everyone's so concerned with special summons and efficient 4-star monsters. So, it seems like they keep trying to push us into trying out tribute monsters, and we're just not having it because of the speed duel format. But I do think that this card's interesting, and maybe if they keep pushing it, eventually we'll have a little bit more of that.
Yeah, not just regular tributes. In the future, everything's gonna come out of the extra deck. Like if all the mechanics that we don't understand as old players, it's all about tributes. You get stuff from the extra deck and you sacrifice it. So something's gonna have to be done if we're moving towards that direction.
If you say so, future man.
Yeah, I see the future. Um, Mokuba is coming back next week, and he's just a roaming duelist. We can never unlock him so far. So he's bringing at least one new card, and that's the Frost and Flame Dragon. And this is a 2300 2000 water attribute dragon. So I guess water beats fire, so that's why it's a water. Even though there's a fire. Can't be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned from your hand by banishing one fire and two water attribute monsters from your graveyard. Can't be special summoned any other way. So Kid Moto can't get it out. Once per turn, you can discard one card, any card, to target one monster on the field and destroy that target. So this card is a bit like Desert Twister, except it destroys monsters and has different attributes, obviously.
Yeah, I like it. And this was one of the card that I was referring to that means that the Aurora Wing being water might be relevant just because you want to play more water and fire monsters to make it work. We were talking about it before the show, and it seems like presently destroying monsters is more relevant than destroying back row, mostly because of the Red Eyes decks and just the Red Eyes meta. They don't really care as much if you destroy their back row, because a lot of their back rows just you can just activate it and resummon it, the Red Eyes at that point. But so this could be better than Desert Twister was at the time. Desert Twister doesn't really see play anymore now, like almost at all. So it could very easily be better than Desert Twister currently is. It would make for a slightly different type of deck, though, I think, because I was looking at the cards, and Desert Twister worked because a lot of the earth and wind monsters were pretty solid, just normal monsters. So you were essentially playing a normal deck that had a slightly specified, like, kind of finisher play to just really flip the board and finish it all in one game, or in one turn. So it was, you would just be playing your 1700 attack guys and your harpies, which were good just to destroy your opponent's harpies hunting ground, and essentially you'd be the 4-star Ladybug of Doom. You're just playing cards that you would have liked to have played anyway, and then you're kind of just tweaking the numbers a little bit to make it into the specified plan, so that on the last turn you can summon a 2300 attack guy for free and also clear their board and just swing in for that final push. And this, based on the tools that we have in fire and in water for getting cards into the graveyard, it seems like it might be a little bit more of like, a little bit more of like a combo type deck. You've got the various Phoenix support cards like the Fire Island and the Fire King cards that just like to put cards into your graveyard. You've got Screech for water types. You've got some water types, probably some fire types as well, that just like for you to sacrifice them to have an effect. There's a couple of those in the Hammer Shark deck for sure. So there's a lot of ways to efficiently get cards into your graveyard within the fire and water attributes, but they are not as like individually solid and meta relevant cards as was the case with Desert Twister. So that's a little bit interesting.
It's cool to just Screech.
Yeah.
Because that card is the card that people complained about as being an SR. It's kind of like a clogger spot, and now it finally has a place, I guess, in this deck.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I've seen very limited play with, like, people messing around with it, but it's definitely one of those cards that's, like, kind of a combo activator type card instead of like a card that you would just play. The last thing I noted was that and I don't actually even know the real name of it, but the Sangan on a Bus card.
Tour bus to the Forbidden Realms. Right.
There you go. See, I missed you, buddy. You always know.
I think that's the name.
That one can get you both Jowls of Dark Demise and Lava Golem, which are, of course, a water and a fire, respectively. Fiends, there's also the one Fire Fiend that is 7 stars and lets you draw a card, but that Flame Ogre. Now you're just showing off. That one's not as good, I think, just to play. But the other two are cards that you could just kind of play in a deck. So I think there's a lot of room to experiment here. And I'm really hoping that I can grab a couple of the Frost and Flame Dragon because I want to brew something up with it.
Yep. And there are also complaints about roaming duelists in general. But personally, I thought Mokuba was one of the easiest people to farm ever. Like, I got all the Dark Flares and Gidmodos and everything, but it's all RNG, so you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, they can make it easier or harder, or, they always tweak them a little bit when they come back anyway, so we'll see.
Yep. So get ready for him. He's coming on Tuesday, I think? Yeah.
Yeah.
22nd.
Yeah.
So, yep, new guy to farm. And there's also that new legendary duelist that might have been delayed. They mentioned a new format or something, but that might come in the last week of the month. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's true. We had the announcement at the before the beginning of the month, so I doubt that they've probably switched plans up too much, because that's a pretty major thing to switch, but I would not be surprised if they are kind of reevaluating their launch schedules and everything based on all of the complaints about the most recent set and the cost of playing and everything.
That's what I think it is.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right.
And with that amazing transition,
we're going to the Duel School. And there are a lot of free-to-play guides roaming around now with the discussion and complaints about how hard it is to be free-to-play in this game and ramping costs. We have some Reddit threads here. One thing that DK implored the community to do is not just to whine, because he said a Konami representative doesn't read those threads. The main connect from the West to Konami is one guy who reads English and speaks it. He doesn't read things that don't have constructive criticism. So we have 2 red threads here. One with constructive criticism and one just outlines the problems. He said he spent like $1,000 in the game. So that kind of sucks. It's understandable why he's upset. And the other thread has the solutions, I guess. They have a new list of problems and some of the solutions. You want to run through some of the issues the main issues of the game?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's always complaints about the cost of playing, and I really think that was kind of the catalyst of all of this, is that there's this big set dropped pretty soon after the 2 sets immediately prior, and we have not yet gotten a huge amount of gem influx. I mean, we've gotten more. It seems like they're working on it, but we've not gotten enough to kind of cover the fast pace of the box releases and stuff. And so one of them is entitled, the guy who had spent over $1,000 is, "Yes, I'm a whale, but this is not sustainable." And that's kind of like the issue, is that there are so many packs coming out, and you can only buy so many with the gems that are available in the game if you're playing at any sort of reasonable pace. In fact, I'm not even sure. There are infinite gems in the game because you can just keep playing and you get gems very slowly. There's also the free gems that we're going to talk about, but you can get gems as drop rewards. So from farming or from playing against legendary duelists, and you can get free keys, infinite free keys from playing in PvP. So there are literally an infinite amount of gems in the game, but I'm not sure if it's actually possible to get them at a fast enough pace, even if you play 24 hours a day, because it's a roundabout way of doing that. So if you want a full play set of cards, it might actually be impossible to do that free to play. I don't know. But it is definitely harder than probably almost anyone can realistically do, at least for any sort of length of time. There's another issue, I think, that some people don't like the card trader, in that it doesn't really help a ton for filling out your collections. I think a lot of people are looking at the Hearthstone model of their version of dusting and crafting cards, and just kind of looking longingly over at that, because the card trader, as we all know, offers like a small assortment of random cards resetting a couple times a day, and it's a little bit expensive, but that's okay. So is the Hearthstone method. But you have this very limited pool, and even within the pool, it's further limited at any given time. I remember for the first 2 months of this game, I was looking for Thunder Dragons, for instance, because I needed a set of 3 to use it, and it was just taking forever for him to even offer the third one. Whereas in the Hearthstone version, you can disenchant any card, almost any card. They give you a few free ones for your characters that you're not allowed to disenchant, but you can disenchant almost any card, and then you get a small amount of dust comparatively for disenchanting it, and then you can spend a large amount of dust to craft whatever cards you want. So it's a very expensive process. It's very inefficient, but it gives you this route to get what you want without forcing you to buy, a huge amount of packs. The people don't mention this, but the Konami or the Duel Links method of offering packs is actually better for collection building than the Hearthstone method, at least up until very recently, when Hearthstone kind of changed the way they did packs. But for the 2 and whatever years before that, Hearthstone had this system where if you bought a pack, you would get any cards from the set. And that meant that you could get a lot of duplicates. Right. You can still get a lot of duplicates of the lower rarities, but the highest rarity cards, you can no longer get duplicates. So that was a nice fix for Hearthstone. Konami has kind of already instituted that fix, in that they have very specific and set and advertised things as to what is in the box at any given time. So their packs are actually better in that sense, that they give you more information. You know what you're kind of going for. And so the problem is a little bit mitigated in that sense, in that it's easier to aim for cards, but it's still hyper inefficient, and they don't have a method of trying to kind of get you some alternative value to help with that inefficiency, in that you can buy like I did. I bought 140 packs for 6 cards, or for 4 cards, because I already had 1 copy of each. And that's fine, but it would have been nice if they had a system like Hearthstone's. I probably would have only had to buy maybe 100 packs, and then I could have crafted the last one of those 4 that I needed. Something like that would have been kind of cool. A couple of these people also complained about the competitiveness once you get to King of Games, in that those games don't really matter. There's no ranking within King of Games. There's no constant Kaiba Cup. So, I mean, that's kind of a different problem that we're not really going to talk about here, but that could be an easy fix if Konami wanted to fix that. I'm not sure if that's something that they're hyper concerned about, but going back to the problem of the free-to-play, a related issue is the frustration with the random drops from legendary duelists, especially the roaming legendary duelists, so you can't even like grind it out. If it's random and it's a if it's random but it's a gate event, then you just try harder and longer, and eventually you can get everything that you need. Again, it might not be enough time for a reasonable, a person with a life to be able to do it, but it's, you have to be really unlucky if you're devoting all your time to doing it, so you can just kind of choose. But for like this Mokuba event, there's a solid chance that you can be the best player in the world, and you can play more than almost anyone, and you can still not get the cards you need. And that's exactly what happened to Decade with Super Joy, of course. And so there's that issue that could again be mitigated by a system like the crafting system, if they kind of chose to revamp the card trader. So I would say that those are kind of the main issues in these complaints, and we have no way of knowing whether or how they would choose to work on the card trader, if they're going to make a change there. So we can't really bank on that. So our focus is going to be on the getting gems and spending gems efficiently, because that's something that we can give some advice on within the current system, and we can hope that the card trader might change at some point. But we have no power over that. We can't really bank on it.
Yeah, and just to go back to that aspect, I was curious that Duel Links is the only game where you can't craft stuff. Like all the other card games that came out after Hearthstone have that system. And I think they call Duel Links a different type of game. It's not like a digital card game. They say it's like a virtual card game. Wikipedia. It's like a different terminology. So there might just be like a different type of game. I don't know if there is any other game like it. I'll probably have to do more research. But all the ones that I've played personally have that disenchant system to make anything you want. But Duel Links is special in that regard. So
yeah, and when you say that, just for the viewers at home, he's tried out like a ton of these digital card games, right? You tried out
Shadowverse, Gwent, Duelist, Test Legends. I've played them all. Yeah, they all have that system, but Duel Links is the one that's different. So, and everyone probably has that perspective. They're saying like, why all these other games are like Hearthstone, but why isn't Duel Links like that? But there might be a reason to it. We don't really know.
Yeah, I think one thing that they wanted to do was they wanted to give it more of a sense like the show, where it's kind of, I don't know, anarchy, where everyone has like these weird decks that are incomplete, and you never know what you're going to see. I think that was kind of part of their original goal, and that's why they made it with like random drops, and that's why they made so many cards printed so quickly. I think they intentionally don't want us to have complete collections, because they think it would be boring maybe for there to be like a settled meta in which you know which are the best decks and you can just go get 3 of this card. And perhaps there's some merit to that, since there's only 20 card decks, so if everything gets too refined, then it will be too good. But I think maybe they've tilted it too far in the opposite direction towards because people want it to be competitive. And when you are making it into a competitive game by making it this esport that shows up at your world championships and you're giving out thousands of dollars worth of prizes for it, then you kind of have to pivot a little bit, because now maybe it's not what you wanted when you initially started, but if you are going to follow that promise, then you need to kind of make it more realistic. And as far as I can tell, I mean, that happens to a lot of games. It seems like that kind of happened to Hearthstone a little bit, where they weren't intending for it to become an esport, and then all of a sudden it became the biggest virtual card game ever, and presently it's kind of the only one that really has like a big esports scene. I know a couple other ones are trying, so it's not always what the developer wants, but if the developer wants to go with where the community is going, because that's where the money is, or they, have changed their mind and they agree with the community, or for whatever reason, then you kind of need to you need to adapt the game to this new situation that you didn't quite anticipate or want from the get-go, but maybe now you want to. And since we live in a digital world where you can update your games, it's not like back in the day when you sold a disc or a cartridge or whatever, and then once you sold it, it was gone. Now you can update your game, so I think that that's a good argument for doing so.
Yeah, it's just an adaptation to sign of the times, and
Yeah.
esports is making a lot of money. I own Blizzard stock. They're making me money. It's crazy.
Hey, that's a good idea. I should have bought some Blizzard stock too. And then I could be like, no, I'm not spending money on packs, babe. I'm just spending my investment.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to how to be better as a free-to-play player.
Yeah.
Basics, earning gems. Why don't you talk about earning gems, and I'll talk about the next thing.
Yeah, that sounds good. So Green Ranger wrote this really good point about the stage 38 dilemma that he's going to talk about next. And before we get into that, though, I want to just kind of really quickly give some basic quick points about how to get yourself some gems, just in case our listeners either forgot or never knew. And some of we've gotten got like hiccups over here. Some of our listeners have been asking us for free-to-play guides, and we have a couple like personal friends who joined after they saw what we were doing. So we never know. There might be some new players in the fold as well. So a couple things to do are, number one, make sure you check all of the free gem locations every time you log in. The free gem locations are the fountain, on the screen with the fountain. In the card shop screen, it is just kind of above the card shop door. And you will note all of these places because when you click on it, there's a little animation. And even if you don't get the gems, there'll be a little animation. They seem to be based on like a timer of chronological time, not like a number of activations timer. So you don't get any benefit from just clicking it a million times, but make sure you click it every time you go in just to see if there's a couple of gems there. It's like 1 to 5 every time. It's not like a huge amount. But so there's the fountain, there's on top of the game store, I guess. There's in the next one is the PvP area. So if you go to the right side and click on the lamp, I believe it's like the second one from the front. And then in the final screen, it is the trash can. So click those every time. Oh, sorry. There's also a new one, a couple new ones. There's the Duel replay, which you can watch once a day. And there's also when there's like a new set announcement in the store screen, you can watch a little video about it and get gems there as well. For the new ones, you can actually, I recently learned, skip the video. So you can go into the Duel replay and just press stop, and then it'll get out and you'll still get the gems. But I've also watched some really good games in the replay. So, if you're not in the mood, you can skip it, but if you are, that's fun. Another one, the next point is to farm easy legendary duelists. We were just talking about how it's especially good when you're farming the temporary events, because otherwise you are not taking advantage of all of those keys that you get. So I was just talking about how I had more than the counter allows me to hold. So I have over 1,000 keys. And if I don't use them all, I think they get converted into gold. They used to, at least. And at like a very inefficient rate. I would get like, maybe a couple thousand gold or something like that, which is not very valuable. But if I use them all, then I get, 10, 15 drops of gems sometimes. Sometimes it's just one gem. But very slowly, that's a couple packs right there that I would have been passing up on if I hadn't done it. So definitely try that out. And even your normal legendary duelists at the gate, when there's not an event going, you can also do it there with those guys. if you're playing against a standard duelist, you have a lot of keys. I haven't farmed legendary duelists for a while because I have almost everything that I need from them. But just in terms of taking advantage of all the resources I have in the game, if I'm not farming them, then I'm not getting any use out of the keys, all of the many keys that I have from the standard duelists, from just auto-dueling them. So you definitely want to take advantage of the resources they give you and farm a legendary duelist every once in a while, especially the easy ones, because that's not a big deal, and try to get a few gems there. Another tip is to play some PvP. They've, of course, revamped PvP rewards, and they're a lot more generous now than they used to be. And you should definitely try that out. I mean, we've talked about that before. They also give out the super rare tickets, so that's nice. Level up your characters, of course. That's probably the main and easiest way to get a lot of gems. Unfortunately, it's capped, unlike the other ones, because there's obviously level caps. I've reached the level cap now for gems on all my characters. I'm definitely not the only one. I've seen a couple posts on Reddit and stuff of people who are already at 40 with everyone. I'm at 39 with everyone, and 40 with a couple. So you get there, of course, by doing the standard duelist. The PvP is really slow, but you get some experience there as well. The events, just dueling. The Vagabond is another great way. Obviously, he's kind of like the booster, the quick way to get there. And a tip for people who are new there is that you always want to send it with the one card challenge if you're sending it to your friends. And you tell them to do the same, of course, because you want to receive it with the one card challenge, because for whatever reason, they decided that even if you lose the one card challenge, that one is worth more experience than any of the other ones, even if you win the other ones. So that's the best one to pick. And then the final option, and the segue into Green Ranger's section, is to increase your stage levels. You sometimes get gems from doing that, from either doing the kind of missions within the stage or from the actual stage promotion. So why don't you talk to us about the Stage 38 dilemma?
Yeah, this is something we wanted to talk about for a really long time. Long ago, I was reading something on Reddit about people advancing to stage 39, and there are often comments saying, "Don't do it. I've regretted it really bad." And I've taken this advice to heart, and I'm still at stage 38 for like the last 5 months or so. I forget, but there. This is not something that's definite, like what Deck Tech just said. What he said is definite, but this is something that you have to take with a grain of salt. So let's talk about it. Um, what are standard duelists good for? I think they're kind of funny. Some of them, like when they win, they're kind of funny. But you basically beat them. That's the point. You beat them for resources, your gold, your gems, your stones, your keys, and spare cards for melting or getting glossy cards. You beat them for EXP, and you beat them to get event pieces. So the goal is to just beat them and not really grind them out in a farm. It's all about time. And for people who are free to play, we can assume that free to play players have smaller card collections, and this obviously you're buying fewer packs, so you have fewer cards to play with, and this leads to fewer competitive deck building options. So that's given. And we can assume that a free to play player has less time because they have to spend time to make up ground. They have to farm duelists more than others just to get the premium cards instead of getting a card that's kind of there already in a pack. So back to standard duelists. They should be auto-dueled because unless you have a ton of time on your hands, you're probably dealing with something in life or work or school or something. So I'm not telling you to auto-duel in school. You should watch what your teacher's doing. But auto-dueling will let you do stuff, will let you gain resources and advance in the game while you're doing something else. And you want an auto-duel deck that will get you a really, really high win rate against standard duelists. We all know auto-duel is really frustrating. They make really stupid things. They make questionable decisions. So you want a autopilot deck that they can't really mess up. Even if they mess up, you want them to be able to win the game. Really high win rate. And of course, standard duelists, they don't come back right away. So once you beat a whole set of them, they come back 4 hours later. So the problem with stage 38 versus stage 39 is that stage 39 introduces a new set of standard duelist decks that are much more difficult to defeat than stage 38. Even if you refine your deck with some stronger monsters, the win rate overall isn't going to be as high as it was on stage 39. So I'm going to go into some of the decks. Stage 38, if you've stuck on stage 38, you would know the decks by heart pretty much. There are some decks you win probably 97% of the time. I'm just estimating with some of the things that mess up sometimes, but like Gemini Monsters 2, Magical Hats, Spirit Monsters, Union Aid. There's a Flips for Real deck, which takes a really long time for me. Sometimes they deck out, but you still win most of the games. There are some decks that win a little bit more, not too often. Like they beat you sometimes. Graveyard Power, for example, if they get the Wonder Balloons going, sometimes you can't do anything about that. And Aqua Chorus, if they get the right named monsters lined up right, they could sometimes overrun your guys. But typically, you just need some 1800 attack monsters, and if you have enemy controllers or mirror walls, those will definitely win you the game. So let's go to talk about stage 39. They have a deck called Angel and Mythical Beast, and this is Temple of Kings and Circuit with Twin-Headed Dragon. It's not too difficult, but they have a card, Curse of Anubis, which is a trick that none of the stage 38 decks had. Coin of Destiny is kind of an RNG deck that's probably really frustrating. It runs 3 Time Wizards, 1 Blowback Dragon, Graceful Dice, Skull Dice, 2nd Coin Toss, so it's kind of like farming Keith. And you know how inconsistent that is, so it's kind of really unreliable to win with Auto Duel, because the Time Wizard can just blow up your board, and with 2nd Coin Toss, the odds are better. Enraged Dragon is pretty much Rex Raptor deck. They have the 3 dinosaurs that you would run in Rex Raptor, and also Jurassic World, so he's starting off 1900 attack beaters if they have Field Spell. And they also have a card that bounces your monsters, so that's something to look out for. There's a deck called Firebeat, and this one looks really difficult. They have a bunch of trap cards like Time Machine and Regretful Rebirth that brings stuff back to the board. So even if you destroy their guys, they come back the next turn. And they have Flame Ruler, which gets out a card called Firestorm Prominence, which will destroy your board when it's destroyed, unless you have fire monsters to tech for this specific deck. The Auto Duel is just going to destroy that monster. They're not going to do anything else, and that's going to clear your board, and they're going to attack you. They have some really strong cards, too. A Guardian deck runs 3 times for Yoku, so that's something that previous decks didn't have before. Legendary Ocean gets out a Orca Mega Fortress for 2300 attack with 4 stars. Pretty strong there. And then there's a Venus deck. That's probably the easiest one. But overall, compared to Stage 38, which probably had 1 or 2 tricky decks, this one has at least four tricky decks. So your auto duels are going to get worse results, and you're going to get less stuff, which will result in fewer gems, fewer rewards, fewer event keys, everything, which is detrimental. Obviously, there are issues. If you don't move past stage 38, you don't get the gem rewards from every stage. Sometimes they're like 50 or 100 maybe. And but the good thing is your time's freed up, so you don't have to worry about completing tricky missions like getting 100,000 effect damage or something like that, or something really tricky. So you could spend more time farming legendary duelists and doing things that are more important for being better in the game and getting a better collection. The question is when to move on from stage 38. I think an excuse could be made if you farmed all the legendary duelists of all the cards, like you got your 3 enemy controllers and Champion's Vigilance and anything else like that. But it's hard to tell if there's going to be a new legendary duelist down the line that you want to farm and you don't really know. So I'm not really sure if you should ever move from stage 38.
Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask, and I think that there's definitely some room to debate there either way. I'm at the point where it's a very good question for me to ask myself if I'm ever going to move on, because I have been at 38 for a long time now, and I am now out of gems yet again from the character leveling. I have everything that I need from the farming legendary duelist, so like I've kind of ticked all of the boxes as to what I might be, reasons why you might stay, except for just general difficulty of farming or of auto-dueling them in the event, like future events, where I still want to have the option of having all of these keys and everything. There are, of course, decks that work for the standard duelist as well. I've seen people posting decks that can auto-duel the standard duelists at 40 and whatnot. So I think I might be pulling that trigger soon. It always kind of hurts to advance stage if you haven't cleared the standard duelists, and so I just kind of hadn't had a good opportunity to do so yet. So I didn't want to switch from 38 to 39 without having like a plan in place for how to deal with the harder duelists. So I didn't when I make that switch, I'm going to have to redo all of my decks and stuff. So I just hadn't kind of sat down to do it yet. But I think I'm at that point where I'm going to soon.
Yeah, when you do actually decide to move on, it's good to do a lot of the research to see if you have the cards that would work in the auto duel for those decks. Yeah, I almost did it by accident. So I mean, I wasn't exactly upset. Like I wouldn't be distraught if I clicked it by accident, like I almost did. But like I feel like my collection's good enough, but I haven't farmed the SDs enough. I mean the LDs enough to get all their cards, so that's where I'm at. I could advance too. But, new players should definitely stay. That's the takeaway, I think.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a big advantage to sticking around for a little while. For instance, whenever we have these gate events, it's really easy for me to get those maximum, like whatever they're called in for that particular event, the maximum resources. And that means that there's this lasting benefit to having this really easy auto duel for whenever these events come back in the future. And that's definitely not something that you want to overlook, because if it becomes a big struggle to face the legendary duelist or the standard duelist going forward, then you get less options for the legendary duelist going forward. So that can hurt you for the entire game. So you want to be careful about the decision.
Right, and the caveat is that I only looked at the stage 39. It's possible the ones at stage 45 get easier than the ones I just mentioned, but I think they're just going to get harder or stay the same. Personally, that's what I think.
Yeah.
All right, and our friend Doug Diamond Duel from Yugi Deck Talk podcast, he wrote a guide about saving money when building your deck. So we have the link for you there if you want to check that out. Cool. Do we have any shout outs this week?
I hadn't really thought of any, so I don't think I do.
All right. I guess we could shout out to the community for taking advice in growing and working with Konami collaboratively to make a better game.
That's a good one. Good call. I second it.
Yep. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and any other podcast searching things. And also leave us a review if you can. That could pay dividends in the future for our audience. And we do want to hear what everyone wants to say about the podcast. So leave us a review if you can.
Yeah, it makes us better. And everyone keeps saying that it helps other people find their podcasts. I don't think we're yet at the point where our reviews show up, but we want to get there, especially on iTunes. I think it's really important for visibility. There's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh podcasts, but not a lot of Duel Links podcasts. So if people are looking for that resource, we of course appreciate your word of mouth, helping them find it, but also it's beneficial if they can kind of find it on their own through these means. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, it's like going to Yelp and not finding a restaurant with like no stars or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So any help is appreciated. You can find the podcast and more at our new revamped website, the duelassessment.wordpress.com. We have a YouTube channel where you can listen to these if you have difficulty getting it other ways. You can help support us grow. Give us suggestions. What should we do better? Help us grow. Patreon.com/duel_assessment. You mentioned something last week about specific requests, right?
Yeah, you can, when you give a Patreon support, the default is that you do it on a month-by-month basis. We have it set so that you can give as little as $1 per month, $1 per month, or as much as you want. I think it's actually like $1.30 now, because it used to be that Patreon would take its cut and whatever from on our end, but now I guess it attaches it on the front end. But anyway, you can give $1.30 a month, or you can just give a one-time thing by giving it, waiting for the first of the month, and then canceling. You don't have to have it up for multiple months, and you can always message us on Patreon. So you can send it with your donation, or you can kind of just send us a message on Gmail or through the Twitter or whatever. Just get in touch with us if you want to see a particular thing, and we would definitely, of course, use whatever donations that you want to give for that specific reason. We would, of course, do so.
Yep. And those avenues are email, the duelassessment@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter, duel_assessment, me at Green Ranger HS, DeckTech at HS DeckTech.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye.